Pandemic panic, what to do? My goal here is to give you some tools to help you get out of panic mode, to explain the pathology of trauma, and to share some insights and ideas about the spiritual aspects of this pandemic. Right now, we have to keep a few things in mind. The first one is the Torah commands us, guard your soul and your lives very carefully. The second one is trust as if everything is up to God, and act as if everything is up to us. We have to do our part. We're in a really crazy situation right now. People are freaking out. People don't know what to do. We don't know what to expect. We don't know what's coming next. Bodies are piling up. They don't know where to bury the bodies. They don't have enough space. They just said yesterday that in New York they're talking about burying them temporarily in a park someplace in the Bronx. It's just really even difficult to think about. But basically, since 9/11, we've been living in a place that is not really safe anymore and secure from foreign attacks on our territory and our country. And since then, terrorism has become almost a daily word in our vocabularies. We have been living very stressful times with all the suicide bombings and all the shootings and the stabbings and the school shootings and murders of police officers and street beatings of innocent people, cars being driven into crowds, and people being beaten up because of their religion or their politics, or because you were a MAGA hat, and the terrible effects these things have on families and the communities. And now we have the coronavirus. So if all those stressors were not enough, now we have to deal with lockdown, shelter in place, self-quarantine, cabin fever, loss of jobs. We don't know how we're going to pay our bills, our mortgage, our rent. We don't know where the food is coming from. We don't know who's handling the food. And then, of course, there's the sudden loss of loved ones, God forbid. And for those of us who do not have the benefit of living with a family, then, or for those who have been diagnosed with the virus and are stuck in the ICU, isolation and terrible, terrible loneliness comes up. And when that happens, all these stressors depress the immune system and make us more vulnerable to contracting the COVID-19 virus. I think there are several better names that we could give to this virus than the COVID-19. I think there are other names that we could do, and I'll share a few with you as we go along. First thing I think is that we've been used to having attacks from the Middle East. And now all of a sudden we have an attack coming from China. Whether it's voluntary or involuntary, we don't know yet. We can't trust their data, we can't trust their statistics, we don't know what's going on in that country. And the word pandemic, the last three letters of pandemic is our MIC. And I think that should be the name of the virus, the MIC virus. Because what does MIC stand for? Made in China, just like everything else we own. We'll talk about that more later on. I want to take a little moment to give you a little smattering of what PTSD is. Have you heard of PTSD? Post-traumatic stress disorder? Post-traumatic stress disorder is what happens. It's a one-time, very stressful, extremely fearful event, whether it's real or perceived, that causes the person to respond with helplessness and terror. And of course, very much fear. Those feelings get stuck in the subcortical brain and in the body. And the traumatic event replays itself when triggered easily. And we'll talk more about this in detail. We're going to go into the details of how PTSD works. Excuse me. I know you're not supposed to touch your face, but I'm at home. We have become a nation, not just of PTSD, but what I call CTSD. What does that stand for? Continuous traumatic stress disorder. Think about this. A rabbit is being chased by an eagle. The eagle's looking for dinner. And the rabbit runs away fast and runs into its rabbit hole. And the rabbit is terrified for a minute or two. And then it shakes itself off, relaxes, releases the trauma, and it goes about its business as usual. But humans are different because we think and we tell ourselves stories. We tell stories. Oh my God, I could have been killed. I almost died. How did this happen to me? And I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to my wife or my kids, and so many other things like that. And on and on and on we tell ourselves stories. We perpetuate the trauma by doing that. When trauma occurs on a regular basis, the nervous system rewires itself, and the threshold for pain, for fear, and for panic becomes lowered. So what that means is that it takes much less stress for a person with CTSD to go into fight or flight. And fight or flight becomes a habitual state. Nervousness, anxiety, panic, fear, insomnia, that becomes the norm. It's the new norm. So now we're going to add another name to another meaning of the acronym of CTSD, coronavirus traumatic stress disorder. We're living in a constant state of fear and anxiety and worry and panic. And our nerves are frazzled, our sympathetic nervous systems are on hyperarousal and sympathetic overdrive. Many of us are stuck in fight or flight, which in Chinese medicine is called triple warmer reactivity. Triple warmer is against the fight, or flee or freeze. That's how they come out with triple warmer. And it's only concerned with one thing, survival. It doesn't like change. It's very strict and it's very rigid. And it'll take over all of our body systems if it feels threatened, if survival is threatened. It's a physiologic reaction, and it occurs in a, like I said, in a real or perceived harmful event or attack or a threat to survival. So what happens during the fight or flight response? There's a sudden release of hormones, and it causes your heartbeat to quicken, and your breathing goes faster, and your entire body becomes tense and ready to take action. And most of us have experienced that adrenaline surge with the palpitations, the nervousness, the fear, the sweating, and the tenseness at one time or another in our lives. It can be overwhelming and totally incapacitating. I'm here to provide you with some simple yet powerful tools to get you out of triple warmer reactivity, or as they say, out of fight or flight, to help you calm your nervous system down, to get you out of sympathetic overdrive, hypervigilance, anxiety, and panic. We can't go around having panic in this day and age right now. It doesn't help. It only makes things worse. Now think for a moment about the addicts. Science has shown that people need at least 10 hugs a day in order to be healthy. When we're healthy, the immune system works better. Okay? Addicts cannot go to their meetings, and they can't go in and get their hugs from the people that they know, from their friends at the meetings, and from other addicts, and talk to them and have relationships. But they're missing the physical touch. People need physical touch. People need to be hugged and held and told, "You're my friend, I love you, and here we are." But not everybody gets to do that anymore. It's not the same on the phone. It's not the same on social media. And not only that, those people will probably fall into their pattern again and go back to drinking or to using drugs because they're so depressed. And that further diminishes the ability of the immune system to fight off this virus. So let's get started right now with one tool to get you out of fight or flight, out of triple warmer reactivity, so you can calm your nervous system down and be able to focus more easily on what you're about to learn by opening up your learning channels, and then you can absorb better what I'm going to share with you. Then I'll tell you a little bit about my background, and then you'll learn some more tools that you can use at home to calm down whenever you need to, so you can get through this pandemic without panicking or freaking out. So the first demo I want to do is called the triple warmer reactivity pose. Now, first thing I want you to do is think of, on a scale of 0 to 10, when you think about all these things we just talked about and other things that you know about that I don't even know about, then rate that feeling of anxiety, nervousness, distress, whatever you want to call it, between a scale of 0 and 10. 0 is, I'm fine, everything's great. And I don't just mean Baruch Hashem, I mean how you feel inside, really. And no, we thank Hashem for everything, but nonetheless we still have stress going on inside. So when you're in touch with those emotions, get that range between 0 and 10 and pick a number. 10 is like, oh my God. Okay, so got a number, write it down, make a note. And then we're going to talk about this. We're going to do this technique, we do it together, this tool. So we're going to take our index fingers and gently bend them over like this. And we're going to take our thumbs and gently touch the fingernails on the index fingers. You don't have to cover the fingernail like this and work so hard to do it. You can just touch, at least you can touch the corner over here. The bottom corner, can you see that? Right there on the inside and thumb side. That's the beginning of the stomach meridian in Chinese medicine. And the end of the lung meridian, which deals with grief, this one deals with self-esteem and also with, not self-esteem, it deals with worry and fear. And this is what we're going to do. And then we're going to take the thumb and put it over here together with the index finger on the temple. And you take your fingers gently. You don't have to meet in the center, but just put them gently on top of these bumps on the forehead, which are right above the pupils. Now, why do we do that? These two points are called the frontal neurovascular points. The hand is magnetic. When we go into panic mode, then blood stops rushing to the front of the brain. It doesn't circulate there. And we lose the ability to think. And this is called the neofrontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex behind this. So when you put your hand over here, it's almost instinctive because we go, oh my God, your hand goes on your forehead. And then we say, or in Hungarian, it's Yo Istenem. So these are the oh my God points. And when you put your hand over here, the magnetism of your hand attracts the iron molecules in hemoglobin in the blood. So it attracts the red blood cells to the front of the brain where we do our thinking. And it gets you out of panic mode and back into thinking mode. Because when you're in panic, you can't figure anything out. Okay, so once again, we're going to do this with our fingers, thumbs on top of the index fingernail gently. Hands like this on the temples, fingers over here. And we're going to breathe in slowly through the nose and out slowly through the mouth like a sigh, like slowly. We're going to do that 4 times. We'll do it together. And at some time during this breathing, you can close your eyes if you feel like it. It'll calm you down even more. So you can start with your eyes open on the first 1 or 2 counts, and then you can close them for the second 2 and see how that feels. Now here we go. So we breathe in through the nose. And out through the mouth. Again in through the nose. And out through the mouth. In through the nose. And out through the mouth. In through the nose. And out through the mouth. And relax your hands. How do you feel now? Compare that to what you felt before we started with that number from 0 to 10, and take a notice inside yourself how you feel and how much calmer you feel. If you feel a little calmer, somewhere between 0 and 10, if it's lower, make a note just so you remind yourself. Okay? Now, we're going to stop at this point on this section and follow along on the next section on the following video on YouTube, because there we're going to talk about, I'll tell you something about my background, and then we're going to talk more about the really deep details of PTSD, which is very important to know at this point. See you soon.